Good afternoon, everybody. I first of all want to apologize for this voice, the whatever you want to call it, the foghorn. I hope you will tolerate. I hope you will. I will make my best, do my best to compensate. So, welcome to our next installment in Congregants Hour. I thought Melissa was going to stay. I don't see her. Melissa, Emma. Oh, there they are. Speak. Look at that. They just appear when I mention her name. Melissa launched this program, what, three years ago? So she launched. It was an incredible idea. Brought it to Temple of Shalom. We've hosted it since, and it's just I don't know. It's like a fine dinner. I love doing this. So I took this on after Melissa introduced it to us, and can't be more excited to be back again this year with two more. Okay, two more, including myself, but two more. People I think I want you to hear from, and it includes me and one of our own. We have like different themes and how we've done this and who we have focused and highlighted, but it's always a mixture. So what I'll do is I'm going to start. I'll do my portion, and then I will introduce Naomi, who will take up the back half of the hour. I'll be her opening act. So I have a lot I want to tell you. I love to talk about this thing we all share in common if you're Jewish, and what makes it mine. And kind of the theme of everything I'm talking about here is, first I thought it was about doing it my way, but it's really about that it's for me, it's owning my faith, and it's always been that way. So I will tell you that. So let me just start off and give credit where credit's due. And that is, I wish I had more people here that knew them, but the only reason I'm here, and it sounds like a redundant cliche thing to say, the only reason I'm here is because of two incredible people, and that would be my parents. And not just because they gave birth and the obvious stuff, but they instilled in me both the love of Judaism, but also the quality of what I'm going to talk about. When I was putting this together, I had no idea how all these things, I wanted to make them relevant and meaningful and connected. And that's when I came up with it's what I've done my entire life, but it's to make it my own. So despite that I violate every rule in the book, I do it for a purpose. For me, that's like part of my constitution that goes that way. So I will not be reading, but I do want to look at my grocery list to tell you about what I'm going to tell you about. So my parents, like I said, I have them to thank. It's incredible. I'm too blessed to have my parents. I also credit them with something else that happened in my life this will be 30 years since my dad passed away, 20-something since my mom. They conspired at some point when they were up in heaven together to bring me that lady right there. And I can't say it without getting emotional because it's all I can tell you. She is that for me, and absolutely, if that can be proven, I could go find them and they go, yeah, you like? So just very happy to have this woman in my life for the last 15 together and 13 married. 12, 13, never remember. All right. So it starts off, I'm raised as an only child in a loving, if you couldn't tell by now, a loving Jewish family. Was I spoiled? Depending upon your definition of spoiled, yes or no. I wasn't. I don't think I was spoiled rotten. I was spoiled, and my parents loved me, and then in turn loved people in general. My father was notorious for being this generous guy who couldn't do enough for people. That was my foundation. They were my reference models. Incredible. So growing up, it was parents who taught me to be proud of being Jewish and to flaunt it. A little side note here: my parents. So this is the 70s, and I'm talking about late 60s, 70s. My parents loved jewelry in the way that people love jewelry in the late 60s, early 70s. They flaunted their jewelry. They flaunted their Judaism on their jewelry. So some of you got the message. So I saw Stars of David, Mogan Davids that were larger than I've ever seen in my life. That wasn't my cup of tea, but they loved it. So Friday night Shabbat dinners. My mother was an incredible cook, absolutely incredible, created my love of food that luckily I have learned to manage, and was known for her incredibly authentic and just delicious dishes. a lot of them ethnic, Jewish stuff, or Jewish soul food. She was known for her matzo ball soup and her chicken soup. I'm going to come back to that later to tell you why it was so special. Some of you know that story already. So favorite childhood Jewish memories, the Seders that were at my house were just spectacular. We had usually 30 people, 40 people. A lot of you had those family days. You just keep adding tables out into the living room, and it just grows and grows and grows and grows. I was in heaven when that would happen. I would always sit next to my father to my father's right. I got to be the first participant reader in the Haggadah. It was just so exciting. Hanukkah with my family. That was never a big event. It was just the three of us when I was little, and they would pile up the entire dining room table with gifts for all of their children. Oh, wait, that was just me. So I got to walk in, much as kids would call, the Christmas competition. Oh, I got all the gifts. Yeah, I got the whole table full. Had no idea when, it was almost as mystical as that Santa Claus guy. Like, when did this happen? I don't understand. And so everything, latkes, gelt, all the traditional stuff. And then finally, playing songs with my parents, playing music with my parents. Some of you know I'm a musician. I play here. That's where I started. I played music with my parents. My mother played keyboard and organ. My father sang, so there was no bass, but we improvised. We played in the living room. We played for family and friends that came over. That was joyous. I started with a snare drum and evolved to the kit, and so it was incredible. So that was the foundation. That's where it began. That's where it started. Let's talk a little bit about the particulars. Shuls. That's for those, synagogue. What we're in right now is a Yiddish word. The Yiddish word is shul. So we as a family were never members of a shul. My father was a member of Winans Road Synagogue, Rabbi Shalom Sulfur, dear friends of our family. But we as a family were never members. But we were always in shul because of all the simchas going on in the neighborhood and the families so for those of you that are from the Northwest and Baltimore County, Beth Israel on Liberty Road was like the happening place. It was like every Saturday. There were 3, there were 4 B'nai Mitzvah happening. We were always there, but not members. Just amazing. Like I said, my father was a member of Winans Road. You'll hear more about that. In terms of my Jewish education, this is where I begin what I was talking about. This is where the doing it my way begins. So I started in Sunday school at Winans Road with Mrs. Beloved Sweetheart, Mrs. King, who taught, so I want to say it was 5th, we were 5. I don't remember how old. I was young, probably 1st grade in elementary school, so 6. She was a sweetheart. I loved Sunday school, much like, where's Randy? Randy's kind of a Randy personality, Randy Chancy. Just called us all Tatala. Everybody was Tatala. First year was incredible. I don't remember if I had 2nd grade, if I left and came back, but 2nd grade was the end of my traditional education. I had a teacher who just was like that, was middle of the road, don't do anything outside the lines. I walked in one Monday after school for class with the 28-cent purple medallion that I won at the carnival on Sunday. Just, it was so adorable with so cute little eyes, just cute. I remember her like yesterday watching me, and I sat down and she says, "Stuart." Like, what? What is that on your neck? I won it. What did she say? Get out. Threw me out of the class. Like, I'm a sweet kid. I love everybody. I've never been thrown out of the classroom. I walked out. I sat and I waited. I think I leaned in. I said, "Can I come in?" No. I went home. I told my parents, I'm not going back to Hebrew school. They disagreed. They didn't like. I said, I'm not going back to Hebrew school. Remember, it's my way, doing it my way, owning it. I couldn't do that. So I paid the price. About 3 years later, we found Rabbi Leopold Fisher. Anybody know the name from Pikesville, Water? He had his own synagogue, a very small shul called on 7 Mile Lane, as a matter of fact. Very small, very orthodox, very conservative. He was notorious as the bar mitzvah coach, the bar mitzvah teacher. So for, I think 3 years, 3 solid years, Linda listening, all my tutors, Mark, 3 years, 1 hour a week of study, and minimum, I was told, and I had to do it, 3 hours of study on my own with his records. he made me records that I had to listen to, and his voice is not the sweetest voice. I got through it. So that's what it took. 3 years later, I was bar mitzvahed at Shaare Zion Synagogue in Baltimore, and that was one of the most proud moments of my Judaism, of feeling Jewish, being Jewish, leading a service that I never knew I could lead, just like we do, very much like we do. I didn't lead the whole service, but I did the entire Haftorah, I did my maftir, I did all the blessings, and I was alone. That synagogue they had one of the islands, the Bima Island, and everybody I started which I was terrified because I had a stuttering issue as a kid. It was like, just get me started, and then gone. They were off the beam. I was alone, and that was exciting, terrifying at the same time. So it was amazing. All right, so that happens. I had an incredible bar mitzvah. The ceremony was incredible. Our whole thing about bar and mitzvah. And I had remember who I am and how much they love me. So we had the event of events at Blue Crest. If you remember Blue Crest in Pikesville, just incredible. Henry Scher in the orchestra, and all of my mother, bless her heart, arranged all of my favorite girls to be like my harem. And we did pictures, and there were pictures of me laying down like sleeping, and they're all like, it was just so cool. It was an incredible event. It was as spiritual as it was gaudy and all that. So that takes me right into my memories of my significant life of Judaism. So number one is the bar mitzvah. It was incredible. I think I covered all those pieces. Then it was leading Jewish services at the National Speakers Association convention. So every year there's a kind of tradition where they have different religious services: Catholic, Christian, Mormon, and Jewish. We have a Jewish service. I created from scratch this service. Chose who I wanted to have speak. There were people that had participate that were not Jewish, people that were, but all speakers or singers. And I had a mourner's Kaddish and that portion of it, short of having Easter, that was just a friend of mine, Janice Stanfield, who sang one of her songs, and then Dr. Carl Hummerschlag did the Kaddish in a way that you could not be in that room and not be just crying your eyes out. It was so beautiful. And I did that. I felt so Jewish, so incredibly Jewish that day. The next, and perhaps the most significant, actually before I get into here, let me mention one more thing. The funerals for my parents were also significant for me. This started 30 years ago, where not as common as it is now for kids to do the eulogies and speak at their parents' funeral. My father's Rabbi Salver, I mentioned, was kind of encouraged me, but he didn't. I knew I wanted to do it. It's a mitzvah. It's considered traditional for the oldest son or the only son to do that. I did the eulogy for my father at what was then Saul Levinson on Flannery Lane before it moved, and just as hard as it was emotionally to get through it, I couldn't imagine not having done it. And then same thing when my mom died, and where they were now, Saul Levinson was in Mount Wilson Lane. And the amazing part of that, I always, again, I'm doing it my way. When I did my father's funeral, it was my way, and owning it was I wanted a recording of it. So I encouraged Levinson to let me record, and I hired an AV company, and they came in, and very invisibly, the Lynn was somewhere else, but I don't remember how, but we did it pretty nicely, and I got a recording. When we did my mother's funeral at the brand new Saul Levinson Chapel, I wanted to play a song for my mother as part of my eulogy. Rabbi Stauffer was like, I love what you're doing, but I can't be in here for it. So he left, and they insisted on playing the CD. And if anybody knows Luther Vandross music, the CD that song is on is about 8 tracks in, prior to the most hip-hop intensive, rap, funky, vulgar recordings. And they mistakenly had to play each one of them as they were trying to find. I would stand there, and I have a recording of this. I said, nope, that's not it. And then you hear things, hey, y'all, what it is? And nope, that's. And I remember saying something about plotzing. Plotzing is a used word for I'm now melting into the floor. And then finally we got to Dance with My Father, and I literally just fell apart in front of everybody, because that was the song. My mother and I loved to share music, and did. And I looked up and I went, you did this, Ma, didn't you? You knew. So it was an incredible, but to be able to do the eulogies for my parents just made my heart sing. All right, so on we go. Then we get here. So 15 years ago, I walked in these doors. Remember, I had never been a member of a synagogue. Well, we were in Florida. When I moved to Florida, I was a member for a very short time and felt like it was just like it's like a ceremonial thing. We remember. And I was a member of Beth Israel for whatever short time. But we came here, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I was home. That maybe because it's a Reformed synagogue, not a conservative, not Orthodox, not conservadox, not any, it's a Reformed. And I had been doubting my entire life whether I was, well, my parents they're Orthodox, they're kosher. We're going to get back to that. I didn't think I was in the 70s, and I saw people playing guitar. I said, that doesn't feel normal to me. So all this in evolution. I came here, and from the very get-go, it's home. It feels like home. And just as the great Rabbi Gila told me, as I was having whatever connection I was about how frustrating it was, and who I was working with, and on the board or whatever it was, and Gila's words to me that live on forever, and Linda could recite them. We're a family, period. All families are dysfunctional. And that oh, God. So on and on we go, and I learn. But so coming here, I've been on the board. I couldn't be more about blood drives, congregant hour. I'm the president of the Collaborative Brotherhood. It's a president name only. We're all involved. And just could not be more happy to be here. This synagogue has been my home. It's where I got to know my sweetheart, and that's been the joy. So beyond that, and in addition to that, or subordinate to that, playing for Jewish services especially, that I get to play music and play drums. The memorable ones have been when I've done it. I mean, people here know when I play, I'm playing music. When I do it as kind of more of a spectacle, if you will, when I'm playing for an event, like I played for Israel Independence Days. I remember I did one in Pikesville and did a drumming event. And the Jewish Times came up and said, "Aren't you using African drums for this?" I went, "Yeah." "Well, is that allowed?" I said, "Yeah." And then at the NSA I told you about, the president of the association walked up to me. I was playing a djembe, an African drum. Walked up to me, tears rolling down her eyes, and pulled me aside and said, "Thank you so much for using the ceremonial drum." I said, it's a djembe. It's not actually part of Judaism per se, but it was definitely moving, definitely touching people. All right, a couple more things, and then I will having a fold it up. Excuse. All right. What else? What haven't I covered for you? Until Independence Day, I told you. All right, so maybe the last of the most significant moments was, 3 years ago. It's been 3 years. I finally got to Israel. We did a cruise, a Mediterranean cruise. We landed on the shores. We went to Tel Aviv and Haifa and Jerusalem, the ports, and then went to Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, Wailing Wall, and it was, again, another experience. Aliyah, it's home. I felt, even though we were there for a couple of days, we saw Linda's family. It felt like home, even though it was a country I've obviously never visited. I guess it should be the way. Other point I want to make before I wrap up with the little secrets. One of the other things I learned from Rabbi Gila in that room, in the social hall, we did some kind of seminar. And I don't remember how it came up, but it was the concept of Israelite. And what's an Israelite? And she said, well, an Israelite is one who always questions. Always questions. I went, oh, thanks for telling me now, 30 years after I'm killing myself for always doubting, wondering, wanting to make it my own, wanting to fix it. I made it my own. I left religious school. I did it my own. We had to pay Rabbi Fisher. Oh, by the way, Rabbi Fisher's methods of discipline were either smacking my fingers with a pencil or throwing the pencil at me while I was studying and making trope errors. He didn't say anything. I just had a projectile hit me in the head or the face. But I loved him. I loved him dearly. So now, the epilogue, the after effect. So my parents were profoundly Jewish, right? My mother claimed, And that's another piece of it. That's right. That's proof that he was Jewish. Once, when my father died, my mom and I were sitting. I feel like it was the waiting room in one of the waiting rooms in the hospitals. She said, "I have to tell you a story, a secret." I went, "Okay." You know my chicken soup? Yeah, I love your chicken soup. There's a reason it's so good. Okay, what's the reason? Every time I make it, I throw a big ham shank in there when I cook it. And that's why your father loved it so much. Every time. I can't make it. So the point of this is that it's about owning it. It's not just me. I was raised by two incredibly loving people who taught me how to own it and make it their own, even if that means putting the ham shank in the chicken soup. They made it their own. I consider myself, even though I was born Jewish, my mother was Jewish, I had all the right stuff, I am a Jew by choice, because I choose it every single day that I'm a member of a tribe, of a family that I'm honored, to be a part of. So that's my story. Thank you. Thank you so much. So with that, I will turn it over to another archetype Jew in every sense of the word, who I've known since I came here, since the very beginning. And Naomi is just a treat, and I couldn't imagine not hearing from her. So I give you now Miss Naomi Walton. Over the room. No dates. No details. Married, 13. 13. Thank you for clarifying that, Patrick. Appreciate that. We're having a wedding mitzvah. All right. There you go.
Thank you, Stu. My feet hurt a lot, so I'm not going to stand and talk. I will sit and talk. I'm Naomi. For those who don't know me, many do. And hello to my daughter Kalina online on YouTube who's watching. I love you. So I have been a member here for 21 years. But of course, my Jewish journey started before that. I was raised, I wasn't even sure. You know what? I remember in 7th grade, one of my classmates asking me, "What am I in terms of religion?" I said, "Christian," or was. She was like, "No, what?" I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about." She meant like the different, are you Lutheran, are you whatever? I had no idea. No idea. And so actually it turns out that my family was Pentecostal. And my mother actually did not go to church at that time when I was in my teens, etc. But I would, being a brat in a way, I spent the night at my grandmother's a lot because I wanted to get out of my house. And so that meant going to church on Sunday mornings with grandma. And so I did that a lot. And I remember one time I was 15 or 16. So this was in the early 90s. And the preacher, was talking about Jesus and I don't even remember exactly what, but I remember distinctly sitting there and thinking a swear word, meaning I don't believe that at all. So you can imagine what word that was, because I'm not going to say it. So, of course, this was the early 90s, didn't have internet and all that. I went to the library, and I got a book on religions, and I read different things, and I was like, no, I believe in God. I don't believe in this other stuff. And so I was like, oh, Judaism. Okay, yeah, that sounds about, okay, sure. And then I read that Jews don't eat pork. And I said, you know what? That's all right. I said, that's okay. I don't need to be, I can say that I know that religiously that's what I am, but I don't need to necessarily do anything about it. Part of that is because, as you can see, I am African American. I grew up in Waterbury, Connecticut, and I did have a friend who was Jewish, but I did not know any Jews really. And like probably a lot of people at that time, I did not know that there were non-white Jews. I never would have walked into a synagogue, even if I had a burning desire to convert to Judaism. I would not have walked into a synagogue in the early 90s. So, like I said, I'm 15, 16. I knew that, you know what, my beliefs align with Judaism, but so be it. So, fast forward, I went through college, I'm in grad school, and I meet my ex-husband in the year 2000. And we're on a date, we're at Chinese food, and he says he can't order anything with pork or whatever. And I was like, oh, why? He said, because I'm Jewish. I said, oh, okay. And, fast forward a year, it wasn't always, there was some rockiness. Part of the rockiness, and I think my daughter already knows this, so I will say this, part of the rockiness is because of my race. I don't think his mother cared. His father very much did. And so, but when he decided that, you know what, he loved me, et cetera, and we became a couple, and at some point he asked me if I would consider converting. And I said, of course, because again, 8 years earlier, I knew that Judaism would be my religion if I was going to be practicing one. And so his rabbi, or a rabbi his parents knew, introduced me to a rabbi in Connecticut, and I converted at a synagogue in Meriden, Connecticut. It was conservative. And so back in, this is 2001, 2002, I learned the liturgy. At that time, of course, with it being a conservative synagogue, the Friday night services and the Saturday morning were not the same. And the book, I believe it was Sim Shalom, and learned how to read the Hebrew. It didn't have transliteration, and so I did. I learned all that. And so in 2004, my now ex-husband got a job at APG, and we moved here. And I believe the first time that I came to the synagogue, he wasn't even with me. I came. And my daughter was in the car seat. She was 5 or 6 months old. And I remember some people that I met, I think that first night, Raina Richardson, Deb Temple, Amy Schoenberger of blessed memory, very much so. I remember the Jabinskis, and talking and, and so that was in 2004. And I've been here ever since. I've been very active. Of course, when Lena was small, I didn't come as much, et cetera. But as she got into religious school, she started pre-K at 4 with Randy Chansey. And I joined the religious school committee. I joined the religious practices committee. I think 2 years later, Brad, they got me at the congregation picnic and asked me to be the membership chair. And, I'm not a shy person. But also more beyond that, backing up a little bit. So even though back when I was a teen, my mother didn't necessarily go to church, my family was very much involved. My aunt was a minister, is a preacher, et cetera. My uncle, my brother was very, my brother used to carry around a Bible in high school. and they knew me as, oh, you're William's sister, you know, type of thing, very, very. But, and so, you know, some people ask, you know, did my family have a problem with me converting? No. If they did, they kept it to themselves, honestly. My mother would say, she was like, yeah, people ask, she was like, why would I have a problem? She was like, it's Judeo-Christian, you know, okay, fine, you're not the Christian part, but she's like, if you were converting to Islam or something, yeah, that might be a problem, but no, I don't have a problem with you converting to Judaism, etc. And, but my family very much in the church, very involved, very doing, etc. And so, like when I tell my mom, oh, I'm leading services, oh, of course you are. Because to her, it doesn't sort of matter what the religion is, I guess, in a way, but that's what we do. And so I have struggled sometimes, honestly, because I don't feel culturally Jewish necessarily. I have never once wished I could make challah. I've never tried. I've never, you know, I'll eat it. I love it, sure, you know, with raisins, let me tell you. And, you know, as I've, you know, of course, you know, I've been Jewish now for 23 years, and that same sort of reluctance to walk into an unknown synagogue is not the same. I will walk into a synagogue. If it's a Shabbat service, I will be the first to put on a talit because I want them to know that, yes, I am Jewish. Not that I'm some visitor, not that I'm somebody just there to observe, etc., that type of thing. You know, I've thought about this in the past for years. So I've been a member here for 21 years. For years, I would not come to the B'nai Mitzvahs of kids that I didn't personally know because I didn't want to be sort of questioned or thought of as, oh, she's just here as a visitor, or, you know, that type of thing. And sometimes I wonder why I felt that way, because I am who I am and I know who I am. So what did it matter if anybody else knew or not? But, you know, I can't beat myself up for the way I was. I'm not that way anymore. And realize that it is a mitzvah to come and support any of the children who are becoming B'nai Mitzvah, whether I know their family personally, et cetera, et cetera. So, again, I've been part of the Religious Practices Committee, and some of you have been here when I've led services, and I love leading services. And of course, that happened more with Rabbi Gila because she was part-time, so there was a lot of times when somebody had to lead services on Shabbat. And I've been slacking in the past year or two where I don't write the sermon or write the drash. I find them online, or maybe I'll add my own little points in, but I don't start. For years, I did write the drash. And I remember being nervous, especially when someone like Brad or Andy Klein of blessed memory would be there that evening, because I'm like, oh no, you know, like, not judged, but they're gonna be like, why is this black girl up there talking about some stuff she don't know, you know, type of thing. And I don't even remember I don't remember the drash, but I remember that I was nervous, Andy was here, and after I did it, and he said something to me in the social hall, and he was like, yeah, that was a tough, you know, portion, and, you know, what you said was good and something, and I was just like, yay. Oh man, I'm accepted. Oh, jeez. So I had thought at some point of becoming a B'nai Mitzvah, and my daughter was bat mitzvahed in 2017, and she twinned with me, and so that was my bat mitzvah also. And I read the Torah. I might remember the first word of my portion, Vayakel. Vayakel Moshe, 2 words, gotcha. And sometimes I wonder, because 20 years ago I could read the Hebrew. I'm not gonna fake the funk. I read the transliteration now. There are some letters that I remember. I do remember all the vowels. But it's, as I've gotten out of disuse. And the other year ago, I taught first grade here and sort of had to relearn because I was teaching the kids. And so that's why I even remember now more so. I mean, do I know the names of the letters? No, I do not. But if I see a letter, I'd be like, oh yeah, that's the s. And I could like the best of you. Okay. So, I don't know if I'm over my time or what. Yeah. To an extent. So my ex-husband's family did the separate dishes and all that. We never did that. And I remember telling him that we would never have Thanksgiving at his family's house because turkeys don't milk, and I'm not gonna have Thanksgiving without mac and cheese. And to this day, that's, but no, I've never did the separate plates. But honestly, until maybe 3 years ago or so, I remember thinking, or telling my daughter at some point, I think the only people who keep kosher are us and the rabbi. Because it didn't offend me, but I thought it was kind of odd to go out to dinner with the rabbi. We went to hibachi, and people are ordering scallops and shrimp. And I'm like, okay, that's all well and good what you do, but from the rabbi? I was like, my gracious, because I think it's a little different. I don't think just here, but in general, like in a sort of church setting, if you go out with the pastor, you're not gonna do something in front of them that is kind of, quote, wrong in a way. But I do remember thinking that, and actually for the first couple of years, I did keep separate. I didn't have cheeseburgers anymore and stuff, and that was hard to give up, I'm not gonna lie. And then when I was pregnant and I had the craving, and I said, oh, and I had a cheeseburger, and I would have them until my daughter was potentially old enough to know that that's what I was doing. And I did, like I didn't make them at home or anything, but if I was out and I went to the drive-thru, I wasn't getting a hamburger. I was getting a cheeseburger. But then when she was like 3 or 4, I was like, yeah, I can't order that no more if she's with me, because she'll be like, oh, you're not supposed to. So, yeah. So, yeah, that's that answer.
My dad grew up Orthodox, but I grew up conservative, and like his sister kept kosher and everything. Oh, thanks. My dad's sister kept kosher, but we ate everything, right? And now it's like we're Reform and we eat everything. So I'm sure you know by now, right, that it's not, oh, I'm Jewish, I can't have pork.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yes.
So have you gone back to eating pork? Because I mean, pork's really good.
Rarely. Even even with cheeseburgers and that type of thing, I might have them when I'm out. I don't make them in my house. You know, if I'm out, I might have shrimp scampi type of thing. But, you know, I didn't grow up in Maryland, so crab was never anything I concerned myself with. And so, like, I'm just like, you know, I remember being at a job and and I was like, you know what? I don't have any desire to try that in any way, shape, or form. So well, that's not a problem. But yeah, yeah. Did you have a question? Yeah.
So I raised my family in Connecticut for about 40 years, 40 years. And I was wondering, when you were converting and going through that process, you said it was around 2003, 2004, or whatever.
2002.
2002, okay. And you were doing it in Meriden
Meriden, Connecticut.
congregation? All right. Did you have any situations or did you have any feelings around you of negativism or difficulty with being Jewish in that community?
Actually, no. In Connecticut, I don't remember a single instance of anybody a side glance or anything. I don't know if they thought that I was converting for my ex-husband, which is actually something that I wanted to point out, because when I had to go in front of the Beit Din, let me back up a little bit. So the rabbi at the synagogue in Maryland was a woman, and she told me that she was not going to sit on my Beit Din because she didn't say this part, but I'm thinking about it, because she was like, she didn't want it to be questioned. And so my Beit Din were the rabbi that taught the conversion class and two other rabbis that I had no idea who they were. But she did not sit on my Beit Din because she was like, she didn't want it to be questioned with having a female rabbi, even though however many years she had been a rabbi. But now that I think about it, it might have been the race playing in there too, that she didn't want it to be questioned in that way. But I do believe that a lot of people think that I converted from my ex-husband. And I mean, granted, he did ask me if I would consider it, which of course I did, but I did not convert for him. When the Beit Din asked about that in the questioning, and I gave an honest answer that, no, I am Jewish. Granted, I would not have walked into a synagogue if he had not been with me, but when I decided to convert, it was not for him. And so when they asked, because, spouses convert for their spouse, et cetera, and they're like, are you going to raise your children Jewish even if you divorce, et cetera, I had really thought about it and answered honestly that yes, I would be. And I've kept that because I've known that. Sometimes I've thought about, people had asked after, me and my ex-husband divorced years ago, like over 15 years ago. And actually, it might have been before Lena started religious school. Yeah, around that time. And I'm sure there were people who thought that, oh, I'll stop being a Jewish, or I'll stop coming, or whatever have you. And the thought never crossed my mind. I'm not even sure my ex-in-laws thought that, oh, well, I hope she's still gonna raise Kalina Jewish, et cetera, because they didn't necessarily know that I did not do it for him. And the fact that we divorced, separated, did not change anything in terms of my religion.
I'm really happy you're here because I brought Sandy here. The first woman I brought in after my deceased wife had passed, and this was the first synagogue she'd been in 20 years, and she's still here, and you were leading the service that day. And the second thing is, I used to be a member at the third oldest synagogue in the United States, which is Mikveh Israel in Savannah. And they had once a group of Israeli college students come to visit. And there was this one stunningly beautiful young woman that told her story. She grew up in Ethiopia, and when she was 9 years old, she walked 300 miles to get a plane to go to Israel. And when she got to Israel, she asked her mom, "Who are all these people?" And her mom says, "Well, they're Jews like us." And she said, "I didn't know there were any white Jews."
So Naomi, like the big part of your life when you said that your religion was BS at the time, what was it that was leading you to think that this probably isn't the way it is? Because most people just stay the religion they're born in. I thought that's a pretty big moment in your life to look for something else.
I wouldn't say that I thought the whole religion was, but what the pastor had said about Jesus something, and I just was like, no, I don't believe that, type of thing. And I actually don't remember talking to my grandmother, my mother, anybody about it. I went to the library and got a book because I was like, I'm not Christian. I don't believe this.
It's interesting. So then I don't know if it was a form of Christianity that was presented in a different way that might have not been so questioning to you, you might not be here.
That's a possibility, but I don't know because
Right.
So I kind of stopped going to church with my grandmother, and at one point I went to a service because my little cousins were doing something, and I was listening to, it's actually my second cousin or my mom's first cousin, however that is, first cousin once removed, however it is. But again, they're pastors, missionaries, they do all, very, very, very. And she was giving a sermon, and I was listening, and I was like, yeah, and then she got into so I hope these people realize they're wrong, and I hope the Jews realize they're wrong. And I was like, I'm not for that. That sort of judgmental, etc. There's, I don't know if it's in the regular Mishkan Tefillah or in the high holiday service. Sometimes I read some of the things on the page that we don't read out loud, and this might be one that we do read out loud, where it says something about walking Judaism street and picking up what you can, and not judging others for not doing even as much as you do, type of thing. And that's what I try to follow, basically. There might have been a time many years ago when I was like, you know what? Oh, they don't ever come to services. I'm here all the time, and I was like, you know what? I can't do that. Because that's not my place. I do what I can do, what I feel comfortable doing. There have been times when, as Rabbi said, I suffer from depression. There have been times when I've come to services and felt immensely better. Whether it's the routine, the songs, the being around people, whatever it is. Last Monday night, Erev Rosh Hashanah, I didn't come. That was the first time in 20-something years that I have not come to Erev Rosh Hashanah service. But I just mentally, I couldn't. I was like, I'm not. But I did put it on YouTube and watched it online, and I felt guilty in a way because it was like I can physically go, but I getting up here wasn't going to happen. But when I came on Tuesday, I felt so much better, so much better. And then for the first time ever, I came to the second day Rosh Hashanah service because I decided Monday night while I was sitting there, beating myself up in a way, going, oh, why didn't I go? This is ridiculous. And I said, well, you know what? I work from home. I can go Wednesday morning and go to the second day service and then go back and go to work. And I'm very glad I did. I won't 100% commit to doing it again. I will 99% commit to doing it again because I did thoroughly enjoy it. And Lynn Sabachi might have helped with that we went to that after. But I mean, there was, my daughter's B'nai Mitzvah class it might have started in 6th grade or 7th grade, but after Rosh Hashanah Day 1 services, after Tashlik, we would go to Lynn Sabachi. Not the whole class, but enough of the class and the parents and all this, and that became our tradition. And we did that. The only year we didn't do that was probably 2020. And we still did it in 2021 when they were seniors. And we went after. And even this year at Tashlik, I felt a little, because I normally get a picture with my daughter, Tashlik picture. And of course, she's graduated school now, she's in New York, and her times of coming back home for the high holidays are over. And that's okay, that's the way it's supposed to be. I'm not mad at you, Kalina. But I did, I felt a little, So, yeah, but in terms of, actually, I was gonna backtrack to what Steve had asked about any negativity, et cetera, that type of thing. Never in Connecticut. I was living in State College, Pennsylvania, and that's where my daughter was born. And I don't remember exactly, but something off was said to me in that congregation. Here, nothing's ever necessarily been said that was kind of off, but I do remember one time, this was probably a couple years ago, and there was another African-American woman, and she and I were talking, and somebody was like, oh, are you two sisters? And I was like, really? I'm like, would you say that to any other Jewish person here talking to another Jewish person? But because there were two black people, they had to be related. I was like, geez. But that's the only thing even here that I remember of any negativity, et cetera. Again, maybe people judge me in their minds. Maybe they're scared of me because I'm not shy. So who knows why? But I've been probably fortunate in some ways, in that way, that I don't get any pushback like that. But like I said, at this point, it's not quite half my life, but 23 years that I've been Jewish, and I'm still coming, I'm still involved, etc. I still don't have any desire to make challah. I say that sometimes when I say, I'll tell people, I hate Passover. I hate Passover. Hate it. I love the Seders, but never, those 7 days, never in my life do I want bread more than when I cannot have it. But I love the Seders, and anybody who's been here who knows that for years I led the second night Seder here. And Who Knows One is my jam. And, it's funny, 2 years ago, or last year, I was on a cruise, and at the first night, for 2 years ago, I was on a cruise, and I remember telling the cruise director, that I don't know what y'all do, but you know, the 22nd is the first night of Passover, and we're going to do something. I can lead it if I need to, but we're going to do something. And he was like, oh, I'm Jewish, you know, we do it. And they had like a 20-minute Seder, and I have a copy of it. But they did. I was trying to get the people who were there to say, like, do you guys know who knows one? Because you know that's my jam. I got to sing my song, right? And then it was interesting too. I was on a cruise, as I always do, but on Holland America, and they had Sunday service and different stuff, and they had a Shabbat service, and so I said, okay, I'm going to make sure I go. And I went, and there was a couple in there, and they didn't even say Shabbat Shalom to me. I don't know if they thought I was just curious or what. I went over, I'm reading the book as much as I can because it was a book that didn't have transliteration, but I'm reading, and they had challah and different stuff, but those people didn't speak to me once. And then they left because I guess they figured that there were no other Jews coming. And I'm just like, what can you do? What can you do?
You mentioned how you felt different and that made you feel uncomfortable. I want to say that you bring honor to Judaism. I want to mention Melissa, Barry. You guys spread the message that Judaism is a good religion, especially in this day and age where Jews are looked upon in a really bad way. So I want to thank you for that.
Thank you, Vadim.
I also want to say something. Thank you for sharing your story. And I learned some things today, too. So when I first started here in 2008, I thought you were new here. I thought you and I started at the same time because you were in my speed reading Hebrew class that Kathy Lazarski was teaching. And I have to tell you now, I was so intimidated by you because you knew Hebrew, you were learning it, you were doing it, and I couldn't get it at all. And I thought we both started on the same day, and you were just flying, but you knew Hebrew previously.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing that story. And I just want to say, Juan, you are a ray of sunshine when you're here. It's just it's always a beautiful place. But it's just amazing when I come here and you're here. And I don't know if I missed it or not, but I think there's an important part of your story here. Weren't you our president at one point?
Yes.
Yes. So Brad asked you to be the membership chair, and you
Yes.
thought, well, of course, yeah, I can do that. And then you become the member.
Actually, I was the membership chair maybe 2009, I don't even remember. And then I wasn't. And then I became membership chair again, like in 2015 or 16. No, it must have been later than that. And so I was membership chair 2018. Anyway, somewhere along those lines. And it was a 3-year term. So I think it was 2021 that Mike Gordon was taking a leave, and I was the membership chair. He was like, membership VP, you step up. And I was like, oh my goodness. So I was president of the synagogue or acting president for 2 to 3 months. And then my term was over and Steve took over. And, as involved as I am, I know my strengths. President is not for me. I am a worker bee. I can be a leader. I can be the one that says, XYZ has to get done. But I prefer not to. I'm more of a doer, the person who, I've been on the RPC now for probably 15 years. And like I said, I love to lead services. I'll lead services in a minute. And I led services Friday, and I felt bad because it was Shabbat Shuvah, and I had not looked up that I was supposed to do anything different. And Lynn reminded me, and she was like, I think we still use the Rosh Hashanah books. I'm like, oh no. I said, well, you know what? I'll just have to apologize in advance because I did the service with the Mishkan Tefillah, and those were the page numbers that I had and all this. And, but actually, I'm gonna say that, and I hope I don't embarrass Kalina. Being a non-white Jew who is active and vocal and recognizable, I guess, in a way. I never thought about what impact that would have on my child. And, there have been times when, I did I was the Ask the Advisor for years, and I would go on the trips with them to different synagogues. And when there were other, I don't know how to say, ethnic, non-white, however, when there were other kids there, or even other adults, that it would be like, yeah, type of thing. And then actually probably like 2 months ago, Kalina asked me, because, there are some biracial, smaller children here. And when she was in religious school, she was the only non-white child. And she never brought that up to me at that point that, she's looking. And so she asked me the other month, she was like, oh, this child, did they ever say that, they're so glad to see you? Because to know that they're not the only different person. And I had never thought about that there may be things that were said to her, et cetera, that she never told me. And I think I talked about this the other day and Wendy was like, yeah, when you go to a bigger synagogue, you have more chance for there to be others like you when you are different. And that's good, because not everybody has that sort of inner strength in a way that I have. Because if somebody wants to say something to me, they know they can say it and they can go on because I'm not the one. But everybody doesn't necessarily feel that way in terms of being able to be like, you know what? Yes, I am. If I go to a different synagogue and put on a talit and people think, well, what's she doing? Doesn't she know that's for? And if they look at me and I'm like, I know. Or if I'm like, I will, as off key as I might be, I'm gonna sing along. Oh, she knows the song. Yes, I do. Type of thing. So that's something that I've thought of in the last couple of months since Kalina said something about that to me, that it is, and actually even somebody else, Nadia, said, that to see me standing up on the bima leading services is such a heartwarming type of thing to see. And I'm just like, well, I'm gonna keep doing my part, because to let others know who might have felt like I did back in 91, 92, whenever that was, that, it doesn't matter what your race is, et cetera, you do you. And you do it the way that feels right to you. You don't have to bake challah. You don't even have to lead services. But if this is your religion, claim it.
Thank you, Naomi. So for next year, we're open again. It's an open canvas, empty. If you have an idea of who you want to hear from, if you're interested in being heard from, let me know. Let us know. We love doing these. So for that, I will leave you to your own to go and conquer or to join us here. The Brotherhood is about to create our sukkah for the year, so you're welcome to stay and help us. And they need help in the social hall with table set up. And we're all back here at 4:30, right? So we'll see you guys then. Thank you so much.